I'm going to be doing going forward for most of the episodes is actually recording them live on Facebook, YouTube, and LinkedIn. So anyone that has questions as I'm recording can pop it in the chat and it will come up and I'll be able to answer them at the end of the show. And if you have questions on previous shows or anything else that you want to ask questions on health, then simply drop me a message and I will answer them in a future show. But welcome here. And thank you for joining me on this podcast. Hopefully you enjoyed the last episode where we spoke about signaling stress and how we can see how stress is showing up in our body. And today I've got plenty of notes here because I'm going to go through a thing that so many people miss. And it is such an important thing to grasp and such an important place to look when it comes to your health that I think we need to talk about it. We need to speak about it a hell of a lot more. We need to work on this thing. And that's a thing called vagal tone. Now, we have a nerve that runs from our brain to our vital organs. Now, people usually go down these obvious routes that they go to lose weight, we go on a diet, we go to the gym, and we go to push things like this. The more mainstream approach, but that is one of the things which I call more the plaster approach or the band-aid approach if you're in the US, where you can't sleep, you have sleeping pills. You got low sex drive, you have Viagra. You have gut problems, you have probiotics. You have reflux, you have lansoprazole, which is a whole nother podcast topic there with lansoprazole. And you know my thoughts on that if you'd have listened to the last podcast. And that works for the short period of time, but it doesn't look to improve your health longer term. And what we need to look at is your vagal tone. Now, that is the ability for the vagus nerve to do its job. And that is to send messages to signal your gut to release enzymes and your organs to do what they need to do. Now, your vagus nerve is what they call the 10th cranial nerve. Your cranium has loads of nerves connected to it at the brainstem. And this is actually vagus is Latin for wanderer. And this nerve is the nerve that goes through your heart, your lungs, your gut. It basically wanders all over your body. And it is the main nerve of our rest and digest, the parasympathetic nervous system. So it is massively involved with relaxation. It is massively involved in digestion. It is massively involved in recovery. Obviously, I need to work on my vagus nerve because one of the symptoms is not getting your words out correctly. Now, what we actually need to look at is, do we have signs that we are spending more time in our fight and flight nervous system, the sympathetic side of the nervous system? We have these two sides, parasympathetic, the rest and digest. And we have the sympathetic, the fight or flight mode. Now, we have to spend time in both, like a DJ mixing. We have to spend time in both, but a lot of people spend much more time in that stress state, switched on in that fight or flight mode, which is not good. And we'll get to that in a moment. But there are some signs that you have poor vagus tone. Now, yes, this is very much looking at other health side of things. And this is not going to diagnose everyone. If you want to ask questions on this, drop me a message and I can speak to you further. As you know, I'm not into pushy sales or anything like that. If you need some help with your health, drop me a message. Just get on a call and let's chat. But there are signs if you have poor vagal tone, is that you get bloated easily. You have poor immune function and you have higher sickness levels. You have lowered heart rate variability and higher heart rate problems, like you don't recover from exercise very quickly. Your heart rate doesn't get down. Maybe it's elevated. You have problems with your blood pressure. You have a poor gag reflex. Like you go to clean your teeth and you start gagging for no reason. You have a poor ability to swallow. Say that you can't actually swallow pills very well. A sign that someone's got poor vagal tone for me is when I send out my client documents. And to be fair, I have a brain screening, I have a gut screening, I have a sleep solution. All these things are included in my client screening. So I'll see from their answers about vagus tone. But a surefire thing is that when I look at supplements for a client, they tell me, have you got this in powder form or liquid form? Because I can't swallow tablets. That is a massive red flag for me to look deeper into their nervous system and their vagus tone, vagus nerve and the vagal tone. regularly getting earaches or ear infections, getting acid reflux or having stomach acid problems, things like losing their voice. Are they going out and they start shouting quite a lot and they lose their voice easily? Maybe they're not even going out and shouting. They go to the football match and they're not shouting, and they're stumbling on their words. And also as well, like, those things are usually a sign of damage to the actual vagus nerve, which we can look to repair and rebuild. But other things that happen in regard to vagal tone, in regard to looking at our vagus nerve and how it is functioning, is that we might have poor signaling. So it's not actual damage to the nerve, it is damage to the way that it signals. It is the communication between your brain and where it is sending its messages. And it could be that you get anxiety or depression, or you have low energy levels. Maybe you are just on edge and you have anger outbreaks. Maybe you have brain fog. Is it that you're having issues with sleep, whether not being able to get to sleep, whether waking during the night or waking up and just still needing 10 more hours of sleep? Is it that you have a low attention span? Just written on my notes, spam, not low attention span. Low attention span or ADHD symptoms, or you've got a lowered tolerance to pain. And most of these articles, like, we want to point out the obvious, that when we have podcasts and articles and everything like that, but what does good vagal tone look like? You have good HRV above 60 most of the time. You have good blood pressure. You have good ability to handle stress. You have good regulation of moods. And you can sleep well through the night without waking up. And when you do wake up in the morning, you have good levels of energy. You have good gut health. You have good organ function. You have a good ability to swallow tablets if you need to with your supplements. And you have been able to talk regularly out in public, or good speech regulation. And it's good to look at, why do we have bad vagal tone? Why do we have bad communication with our vagus nerve? And I think that when we actually look deeper into things, we can see that if we look at the podcasts I've done before, talking about stress and signs that the body is under stress, this is the biggest red flag I see. And what actually causes bad vagus nerve function? Now, the biggest thing is going to be chronic stress over a period of time. It could be that stress is being caused by poor sleep habits. Your environment that you're in doesn't allow you to get good sleep. Maybe you've got bright lights going on. Maybe you're just looking at technology before bed. Habits around your sleep routine. Post-traumatic stress disorder is massive when it comes to your vagus nerve. And what we have to look at is that childhood or is it adult onset of trauma? It can be massive when we actually see that. So many people, and remember, trauma is different for every person. So I have people say, oh, this isn't traumatic. I haven't been through sexual assault or something like that. Like, just because you haven't been through sexual assault, what you've been through may have been just as traumatic for your individual side. Like, don't play down the trauma that you've been through as an individual, and don't kind of be embarrassed about going through that trauma and feeling the trauma from it. Someone could have trauma from a breakup. Someone could have trauma from a job loss, from a loss like myself. My trauma I went through was losing a parent. Someone has had sexual assault. Someone has been through war. Every single individual has had different levels of trauma that affects them in a different way. Some may seem on the surface harsher than others. Absolutely. But don't play down your trauma, because it is absolutely individual to you. Then another massive thing which people underestimate is what we call priming of the glia cells. If you've been hit around the head, one of the questions I always ask people is if they've been hit around the head. Because when people get hit around the head and they're stressed, it could cause a thing called priming of the glia cells. And we have immune cells in our brain called glia cells that clear out dead neurons. And they get active based on stress, and overactive and overactive and overactive. And then if we go through trauma, whether that's a head injury, whether that could be go through the actual physical trauma, could be a high level of stress, get knocked out, hit around the head, that could really overactivate these prime glia cells. And when that happens, that could literally be the straw that breaks the camel's back when it comes to your health. afterwards you then suffer a lot more from migraines. You could be predisposed to getting a stroke. You could end up that you have more outbreaks of depression. You have worse tolerance to alcohol, all these things just from that head injury that actually goes on. Another thing that causes it, poor breathing techniques. It's massive nowadays how little focus I see of people improving their breath work. One task I have for some clients is that when we want to improve our health, is just doing simple nose breathing. Sitting there, closing your mouth, breathing in and out through your nose. Maybe it's mouth taping at night. Like what I've been practicing recently is running, but only at the pace where I can breathe through my nose, which isn't that fast. To be fair, I can't run that fast when I breathe through my mouth, but it's not that fast when I'm going to breathe through my nose. But that is something which I absolutely work on with people to say that allows us to calm down more, to work on our parasympathetic side of our nervous system. Another thing that causes poor vagal tone is poor blood glucose management. And the Western diet is not set up to have good blood glucose management, hence why we're seeing high levels of diabetes, not just in the overweight. That is something we really want to check out, that why are so many people that aren't overweight getting diagnosed with diabetes? So that is one thing that is going to impact it. Exposure to toxins in your environment or things like mold. People don't look at what mold causes to the body. My mentor has been massively open. The mentor Cliff has spoken about mold exposure and what that's happened with him. He's had to move house. And you can have this exposure to mold, and then it gets so severe that it then gets in your tissues, and you get very reactive to things called mycotoxins, which are these toxins within the mold. Now, they could be just when you actually have exposure to them. So you get levels of brain fog, you get allergies, and eyes start getting itchy and all these different things, or migraines, headache, fatigue, all this stuff. And then when you actually stop that actual exposure to them, you start to get fine. But some people have such a severe reaction, or they've been exposed for such a long while, it's actually saturated into their tissues. Now, when it's saturated into their tissues, they actually then get such a severe reaction. It takes such a long while to get out of their system. So that is a big thing to look at. Viral infections. What we're seeing a lot of people now over the last couple of years, when there's been this C19 infections and everything, is that their viral load is getting overly loaded, so then their body breaks and they get much more infections. Their immune system drops. Now, what I describe viral load as is that when you go into a lift, when you go into an elevator, it always has this elevator can hold this amount of people or this amount of weight. Each viral load, like every time we get exposed to certain things, it is like someone else getting into this elevator. And eventually, if it can hold 6 people, when that viral load gets too tall, it's like putting that 7th person going over 5 or 6 kilos over the tolerance of weight in that elevator. That could drop, that could break. And that is what is happening with our body. Every time we get exposed to these infections and we have this certain tolerance of viral load, then suddenly it says, look, enough is enough. So this can cause problems with our vagus nerve, Lyme disease, and also chronic toxin exposure. Now, what is important to note is when we go through stress, that there's I've been doing a lot of research on the polyvagal theory by Stephen Porges. And this is massively linked to the vagus nerve and how we have this rest or digest, which is what we have the front vagus, so the ventral vagus. And that is where we have high levels of social engagement. We have connection, we have joy, we're in the present moment. We have loads of curiosity, loads of openness, loads of compassion, mindfulness, groundedness. We feel cool at that point. And that is in our parasympathetic. That is where we have growth. Like we enjoy the recovery. Now, we then get stressed and we go into this stress state. We go into working in the fight or flight mode. Now, when we're in this ventral vagal, I've got a good, in fact, I'll post this article in the blog post with this, but when we're in the ventral vagal side of things, it increases the body's ability to digest. It increases the resistance to infections, the immune response. It increases circulation, the ability to connect with people, and decreases our defensive responses. We then go into the fight or flight mode where we're actually stressed and we go into there for a long while. This increases our level of fear, anxiety and worry and concern, panic, rage, anger, irritation, frustration. And this is where the sympathetic nervous system, as I say, kicks in, and it increases blood pressure. It increases fuel availability for adrenaline and cortisol and oxygen circulation to the vital organs. It increases the ability for the body to clot its blood. It decreases the ability to store fuel, decreases digestion. Then we're in this state for too long, our saliva stops producing, and the immune response, like we haven't got such good immune system. But there is a state past this called freeze. This is where we start working through our dorsal vagal. And this is where people get where they've been in a stressed mode for far too long. And this is where they get disassociation time. They get numb. Those are depression. Start to have trouble with losing weight. They start to gain weight. Start to feel helpless. Start to feel shame. Start to feel shut down, hopelessness, and feel massively, massively trapped. Now, this point where fuel storage increases, so you gain weight, pain threshold goes down, your heart rate lowers, your blood pressure lowers, your temperature lowers, your muscle tone, facial expressions, you can't keep eye contact as well. Your awareness of what you're saying isn't as good. Your behavior, like your sexual response and your immune response, is all decreased. Now, it's this point we struggle with the vagus nerve. So if I see someone that is in this area, that is where I'll start to like really dive in with the vagus nerve. Work on these things before. This is where we see people that want to improve their health, but start and then stop, start and then stop, start and then stop. It's like they're going around in circles, getting more and more and more frustrated. And you see fitness professionals say, just eat less to lose weight. Yeah, absolutely. But their emotional response doesn't want them to eat less. So they end up binging and then feeling emotionally much, much worse. So it's harder for them to keep in a calorie deficit. On paper, that is what works. Calorie deficit works. But in reality, why are they binging out? What is their emotional response? Where is their body at? What is their vagus nerve? What is their vagal tone like? And are they in this ventral vagal, in the fight or flight mode? Or are they in the dorsal vagal, in the freeze mode? And that's where we absolutely, absolutely, absolutely need to start looking. So first off, before we look to improve it, what I would actually look to do is testing to see if you've got problems with your vagus nerve. Now, the big gold standard test that I look at with people and I test with clients is your heart rate variability. Now, if you've not heard me talk about heart rate variability before, this is essentially the variation between the beats of your heart. So when our heart beats, it goes ba-boom, 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 like my impression. And we always think it's like a metronome, that it beats rigidly. And the more rigid it is, the better it is. But the more rigid it is, the less variability there is between the lengths of the way the heart beats, the more stress we are under. So I use a thing called, this is an Oura ring. It's got little sensors in there. Doubles up as a wedding ring to keep my wife happy. An Oura ring, which will track my HRV on average for the night before. And there's also, I've got a Garmin here, which will track my body battery. You can use Apple Watch. You can use a Samsung Galaxy Watch. Don't really recommend the Galaxy Watch. Didn't get on with it. Lasted 2 weeks and got a Garmin. Love the Garmin. Fitbit, Whoop, whatever your weapon of choice, shall we say, you can use your HRV or you can use to track your HRV. Now, what I look for in clients as a standard is to have this baseline of 60 HRV, to be where our goal is, to be above that, and at least to be near that. Unfortunately, what I'm seeing is people that are highly stressed, when they come to me, their HRV could be in their 20s or 30s. And I'm seeing alcohol is lowering their HRV even more. And what is interesting is to see when people start noticing what lowers their HRV. Late nights, alcohol, processed food, drugs, caffeine, whatever it is, poor sleep, arguments, certain things, their behaviors slowly start to change. And as they see their HRV improve, get better and better and better, their habits become easier to keep. Now, it's all relative. We want it to be 60 and above. Now, mine is usually in the 70s or 80s. Now, if it drops into the 30s, I feel like crap. But for someone who's in the 20s, if that goes into the 30s, they're used to being in the 20s, going into the 30s will actually make them feel good. But then going into the 60s, they will feel so amazing. My goal is to get people there because they're going to be shouting to me to all their friends, all their clients, all their family members, and it's going to be great for referrals, right? But we want to get that to 60 and above regularly. We want to work on that. And I will focus on the vagus nerve as a marker of improving that. Now, another thing is looking at your blood pressure. So our blood pressure, if you ever have it measured at the doctors or anything, there's a number above, which is called the systolic, and the number below, which is called the diastolic. So we want that top number to be between 100 and 140. And we want, excuse me, the bottom number between 70 and 90. If there's problems with that, that can obviously link to your vagus nerve being an issue. Another thing is a thing called orthostatic hypotension. Now, this is where, I don't know if you've ever noticed it, but I used to have a client, and I didn't know about this at the time, but thinking back, she definitely had problems here. And if I wasn't just working with her back when I was a PT, and I knew about this stuff, could have got much better results. But that was like 2013 or something. But it would be that if she'd done squats, she'd get lightheaded. So if someone is sitting down and they go to get up quite quickly, and then they have to hold on to something, or they get lightheaded, maybe they run up the stairs and they get lightheaded, that is a sign that their vagus nerve needs to be looked at, and we need to work on that. Their vagal tone can be improved. And another one is where we do a pupil constriction test. That is to shine a light into your eye, and your pupil should constrict for 10 seconds before dilating. So it constricts for 10 seconds before dilating. If it takes longer, does it immediately, or does nothing, then it's a sign that we are more unbalanced than we want to be. We're either in too much of the parasympathetic or too much of the sympathetic. And we need to work on vagal tone. And we can look at another, in fact, I'll do a podcast on adaptogenic herbs, and it's one of the things that can help, because that will be one of the things that will get us go from that balance of too low or too high to help us get smack bang in the middle to help us improve. And that's where we also look into what can we do to improve it. Just missed something out on here. First thing, as you would look at, is to get a good sleep routine and sleep hygiene. That would be something like getting to sleep between 10 and 11 o'clock. Not eating within 2-3 hours of when you go to sleep. No alcohol in the later part of the day. Well, no alcohol at all. That can massively impact your sleep, even having it at lunch. No caffeine within 7 hours of sleep. 6-7 hours. 5 hours at least. No screen time before bed. All that stuff can make a massive impact. And then looking at the room that you're in. Is there mold in there? Is it dark? Is it the right temperature? Like being in a cooler room when you go to sleep helps your vagus nerve get stimulated. One of the other things is cold water exposure. So lowering your body temperature is gonna help. We'll get to that in a second. One of the things which I find a lot of guys won't do, maybe that's just me, the guys that I've spoke to, like more and more are getting open to it, and that is practicing gratitude. Telling someone around you that you're thankful for them. Like I went out yesterday with one of my old mentors, and I call him Socrates, and it was awesome to just tell him that I felt grateful for him, the impact he'd had on me over the years. And it turns out he needed some help. He posted on Facebook. It felt awesome to tell him I'm thankful for him and to treat him to breakfast. In fact, I didn't actually pay him. My mate ended up paying, another guy that he'd worked with. But just being thankful to it. So tell those people around you that you're thankful for them. Practice gratitude. What are you thankful for? Are you thankful for your dogs? Are you thankful for the food you eat? Are you thankful for the roof over your head, the car you get to drive? What is it? Tell some people that you're thankful for them. Another thing is laughing a lot. One of the things to improve your vagus nerve is laughing. And so watching comedy. I recently, whether you like him or not, it's a very niche comedy, but watching the Ricky Gervais comedy, the last stand-up he'd done was ridiculous. Probably going to lose some followers if people are watching this and don't like what he spoke about. It's one of those comedies where you laugh and think, should I have laughed at that? But I don't remember laughing as much as that for a long, long while. You feel so chilled out. If you go to a comedy gig and you start laughing, you just feel chilled. Laughing to the point where you get that jaw ache. You don't want to laugh anymore, so then you laugh more. And watching old comedy, I love it with old comedy. Watching things like Only Fools, but we watched Look Who's Talking the other night, and it just reminded me like how much I love that. And Look Who's Talking now with the dogs talking. Awesome. But anyway, regulating your breathing. This is another thing I find easier for me to get women to implement, because one of the regulation is things like meditation. And for some reason, more guys are getting open to it now. I meditate pretty much every morning. I journal every morning. I read the Daily Stoic every morning when I travel. In fact, I might have 2 days off because I'm going to Colombia on the 18th. And I'll take my book with me, but we're actually spending 2 days in the jungle. So I'll probably leave the Daily Stoic in the hotel room. But hey, I'll be present. I'll be in gratitude. I'll be in the jungle. I'll be loving life in the present moment. But regulating your breathing. If you are not getting deep breathing in there, if you're having short, shallow breaths, it's a surefire sign your vagus nerve is not getting the ability to work or having the ability to work effectively. So if we can regulate our breathing, in deeply, out, regulate it. Before meals will help with digestion. 3-4 breaths. People look at prayers. I'm not religious. I believe in stoicism, but I'm not religious. But prayers have a massive place because it helps switch into the present moment and helps you regulate your breathing and to actually switch down and tone down the sympathetic nervous system. Things like singing loud, that's going to stimulate your vagus nerve. I just love chucking some Robbie Williams on and singing at the top of my lungs, making sure the windows are shut. When I'm driving in my car, it just helps me chill out so much. Helps me chill so much. Stimulating your gag reflex, take that as you will, but that helps a lot of people with their vagus nerve. And it's working on it. Like gargling is something which is going to help you, but you don't just gargle once. You have to gargle and practice and gargle over and over again to stimulate your vagus nerve, to build it up like a muscle. Yoga, exercise, cold water exposure, as I've said, even just splashing water on your face can help activate and help you with your vagal tone. Good nutrition protocols. What a lot of people have with nutrition is it causes more inflammation. It causes more stress. We go on a diet. We don't have the nutrients in there. We go on detox protocols. We go on these 30-day cleanses. We go on these shake-only diets. Like, they're not built for long-term health. They might make you lose weight quickly, but they're going to impact your health negatively longer term. And if we can get a good low inflammation nutrition protocol, which is going to be different based on the individual, how much carbohydrates can they tolerate? How many fats can they tolerate? How is their digestion? How is their bile production, pancreatic enzyme production? How is their stomach acid production? All these things have to be taken into account. That is going to have a big impact on your vagus nerve. Supplementing with magnesium is a big thing with any neurological condition. And getting that connection from your brain to everywhere else in your body, getting those messages sent, is going to be massive to help you with overall health. And magnesium, I believe the current stat, it's more for America, but could just as well be the whole of the Western world, is that 90% of people are magnesium deficient. Soil quality doesn't have as much magnesium as it used to have in it. Therefore, getting magnesium as a supplement, good quality magnesium, is going to help you. Then we get into things, and I'll do another podcast on it, is adaptogenic herbs. So things like ashwagandha or tulsi tea or rhodiola, rosacea. These are things that are going to help a lot. L-theanine is going to help. Like, they're going to help you with stimulating your vagus nerve and getting out of that sympathetic nervous bias into the balance of good vagal tone. And other things that can help are massages and chiropractic adjustments. I'm not a chiropractor. I go to see one regularly, had a massage just before this and a chiropractic adjustment just before this. But I noticed the difference. So if you're struggling with swallowing, if you're struggling with stress, go and get a chiropractic adjustment, because as you can imagine, the vagus nerve being a cranial nerve 10, it's going to be linked with tightness in your neck. And if we can improve that movement, that is going to help you throughout when it comes to your health. So if you're having problems with your vagus nerve, if you're getting bloated, getting poor, having sickness that high, your immune system is lower, your heart rate variability is lower, your blood pressure problems, gag reflex, poor ability to swallow, regular earaches and infections, acid reflux, stomach acid issues, you're losing your voice and stumbling on your words, you're getting anxious, you're getting depressed, you're having low energy, anger outbreaks, brain fog, sleep issues, low attention span, things like ADHD symptoms, lowered pain tolerance. Have a look. Is there chronic stress? Have you got poor sleep habits? Is there PTSD, head injuries, poor breathing techniques, poor blood glucose management, poor exposure to mold, getting viral infections, Lyme disease, chronic toxin exposure? And then do that testing. How's your HRV? How's your blood pressure? Are you getting lightheaded if you get up too quickly? Pupil constriction test. Have a look at those. You can also do something like, if you stick your tongue out and someone looks at your tonsils, do they just go up and down, or do they go to the side? That's another one to test it. And we can also do some vagus reset, nerve reset exercises. There's one where you hold your head, and hopefully you don't break your chair. You hold your head and you just look forward, or you hold your head forward, and without moving your head, you look all the way to the left. And you hold that as far as you can. If it's uncomfortable, bring it a little bit less, but just look, find a point and hold it there. Eventually you'll get to the point where it might take a minute, it might take 2 minutes. Eventually you get to the point where you yawn or need to sigh. And then you do it to the right. Do that a couple of times a day, every day. That will help reset your vagus nerve. And there are other things you can do to help stimulate the vagus nerve. There's massaging around the back of the ears. There's loads of videos on YouTube looking at other parts of the brain to see where they link in, vestibular rehab exercises. I could go on and on and on. But if you're having problems with that and you need help with that, you need help implementing this routine, you need to get individual advice, you need any of that stuff, drop me a message and we can have a chat. As I say, I want to help you with this stuff. I'm not here to push you into sales. Like, if you're ready for coaching and you want to talk coaching, great. Let's talk coaching. Let's see how I can work with you over a period of time through OJay Health to really improve your health, to really level that up, help you reach that peak performance, get to that next level. Stop being frustrated, stop being low on energy, stop having problems with sleep, with depression, with anxiety, with poor sex drive, hormonal balance, whatever it is. Maybe you're struggling to lose weight. Drop me a message and let's talk to get this individual for you fully tailored. But thank you for watching or listening. If you're listening to the podcast on one of the podcast platforms, any questions, hit me up. Go to www.ojayhealth.com. You can book in for a call there, /virtual coffee. Book in for a call and let's have a chat. Let's see how we can improve your health today. Thank you